Tales from the wild. Stories from the heart. A journey into the mind and soul of fired-up business professionals where they share their vision for the future. And hear from a different non-profit organization every month as they create awareness of their goals and their needs. Dive into a world of untamed passion as we join our host, Shireen Buerta, for this month's episode of Friends from Wild Places.
All right. Well, welcome. Shireen here. I am your virtual boutique bookkeeper and QuickBooks advisor. Thinking about bookkeeping, it may seem odd to go virtual, but at Shireen's Bookkeeping Services, we redefine what service means. Imagine having a personal finance team that goes above and beyond your expectations every single time. With our virtual approach, you'll enjoy personalized service without the overhead costs of hiring an entire finance department. Our pricing is tailored for small business owners, making expert support more affordable than ever. At Shireen's Bookkeeping Services, we streamline your finances so you can focus on what you do best. Experience the difference today. If you want to know more, go check me out at www.shireensbookkeeping.com and allow me to keep your books clean so you don't have to. Well, welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Friends from Wild Places with myself, Shireen, and my lovely co-host, Tanya. Good morning, Tanya. How are you this morning?
Oh, doing great, Shireen. Things are here in sunny Florida. All is well.
Good.
And how's things in South Africa? What's happening?
Lots of flooding, lots of rain, and power outages, which is quite funny because I've just said that and on goes the power. So this might turn into a successful recording podcast. So Tanya, would you mind taking a few moments and just sharing with the listeners a little bit more about our extra content that we're creating for our subscribers?
Sure, would love to. So here at Friends from Wild Places, we have some bonus content, which is behind a paywall, which is to subscribe. It's a minimum of $5 a month. You can do more if you'd like, but for a minimum of $5, you can get some extra deep dive on some content that is maybe not so appropriate for average listeners. So if there's some topic that you would like to learn more about, hear more about, or have us explore with you, just send us a line and be happy to incorporate that with our bonus content behind the paywall at Friends from Wild Places.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanya. Yes, it's just $5 a month. That's where we just go deep and we share a lot of some of the struggles that we've faced, and you might just enjoy it. So thanks a lot. But first, let's get into it and introduce our guest for the month. Today, we have Lisa Zarcone. Please tell me I'm saying your last name correctly, Lisa, is it?
It's Zarcone.
Zarcone, perfect.
Zarcone,
So
yes.
Lisa Zarcone is an author, child and health advocate and public speaker. As a survivor of child and sexual abuse, she decided to turn her pain into purpose by sharing her story written through the eyes of a child, giving the child's perspective of abuse. She also wrote her mother's story about her lifelong battle with mental illness and their complex relationship. Lisa is the Massachusetts National Ambassador and Regional Director of NASCA, which is National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. And she uses her stories and title as a platform to speak publicly to bring awareness and advocate for child safety and mental health. She's also a blogger on her own website, lisazarcone.net, and a social media influencer. Welcome, Lisa. It's so good to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so much, Shireen and Tanya, for having me today. I'm glad that we can do this.
Right, I'm very excited. Lisa has an amazing inspirational story that we're super excited to get into today. But as an icebreaker, we always like to start the podcast with a little bit of either a true crime story or a very interesting one. And today I think I've got an interesting one for us ladies. So I'm not sure if any one of you have heard of the White Island disaster case. for the listeners out there, the White Island disaster case refers to the legal proceedings following a volcanic eruption on Vakari White Island, New Zealand on December the 9th, 2019, where 22 people died and many were severely injured when a tour group was present on the island. The case primarily focused on holding tour operations and the island management company accountable for for failing to adequately assess and mitigate the risks of a volcanic eruption, resulting in multiple companies being found guilty of health and safety violations and ordered to pay significant fines and reparations to the victims and their families. So it was quite recent that the case closed, and it was quite an interesting case. I did send the link to the ladies, so we have watched 60 Minutes. They did a wonderful covering of the entire case and all the victims, and interviewed them all. I also interviewed some of the members from the tourist companies, as well as the rescue team that failed to get there in a timely fashion, which was also quite interesting. But yeah, so the key points about the case was obviously the eruption, the fact that there were 47 tourists on the island when everyone was aware, a tourist company was aware that it was, I think, a level 3, or it was at the highest level it could be, to alert people that the island is extremely dangerous and close to eruption. So the tourist companies were aware of this. And then obviously who was charged? That's obviously a number of the tourist companies, including the cruise ship, which the one family, a couple of the families were on the island that came from. And yeah, so the key findings were obviously they failed to provide adequate information about the risks, and while many of them were found guilty of health and safety breaches and were fined. So I think that my main question for you ladies is, first of all, what did you think of the story? And, what is the one thing that stuck out to you about the disaster? And do you think the cruise ship should have been blamed for, or just been held liable for what happened? Do you want to go first, Lisa?
Sure. I know as I'm listening to the story, I'm just like imagining myself being put into that position because, when you book, trips and adventures like this, you put your trust in, the people who are setting this up for you, that you are going to be safe. It's going to be okay. And I can only imagine what these people were thinking when they really got into it and realized that their safety was at risk and lives were lost because of it. I believe they all should be liable because they have a big responsibility to travelers to keep them safe at all costs. And they were not given the proper information. So I find it very interesting. We hear a lot of stories, of all these different types of things that are happening. And then you have these national, these disasters. And we do need to keep our travelers safe. So I do believe, yes, they should be liable for that.
I agree. Tanya, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Lisa. I think, as far as, especially with tourism, there's always a big price with money, right? The monetary value. And as far as, getting the most in for, the amount of people and, the nature side of things, in addition to just what disasters can happen, in my opinion, is just, there's so much liability. And I serve as expert witness for funeral home and cemetery cases regularly. And even there, it's like, there's so much like liability. So I think what ends up happening is sometimes with the cases, we're only hearing like a fraction of what the reality is. And as you get closer to the case, I think you hear the more of the, the nitty gritty kinds of things. So I think the media also, I mean, I'm not saying, I heard you say, Shireen, that, the 60 Minutes did a great job coverage, and I'm sure they did. I'm just saying a lot of times the media leaves so much out or distorts it or puts it in a way that it's not really what is actually happening. So I think, yeah, I agree with Lisa. I think as far as the liability for keeping the travelers safe, keeping people informed, and obviously, coming forth with the consequential pay because so many people lost their lives or were injured.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, ladies, I feel the same. I agree with both you, Tanya and Lisa, so I won't reinforce that. But the other thing that stuck out to me is that young girl's life completely changed. She lost her father and her sister that day on the island. And she survived. And so she was saying how she has moments where she has that survivor grief. And I mean, I think I can't remember the exact fact, but I think like almost 80% of her body was covered with 3-degree burns, including her face, her head, and she lost most of her fingers. So she's a very brave and amazing young woman. I mean, she's living life now. She was walking around for a good number of years with that mask on. And now the mask is off and she's walking around with her scars and everything. And so brave, so brave and such a confident young lady, but despite everything that she went through, is absolutely amazing. So if you want to go get a little bit more into the story, 60 Minutes does have their YouTube channel, listeners. So you can go and search on 60 Minutes YouTube, the White Island volcanic disaster case, and that should automatically bring the coverage up. So thank you, ladies, for just sharing your 2 cent piece on that story. But let's get into it. So the quote of the day is it's important for us to have the quote of the day because normally there's a lot of people that hang on to a specific saying, a quote, that means a lot to them and gets them through a lot of hard times. And so we love to keep the quote of the day as something to share. And if it possibly touches someone's threads out there that's listening, they might want to take that with them as encouragement, motivation. So Lisa gave us her quote. And it's called Embrace the Journey. And it's such a good one. So go ahead, Lisa, and tell us what that specific quote means to you and why.
Yes, to backtrack just slightly on that. So every year I pick a quote or a word to step into a new year, to just give myself that inspiration and encouragement to go forward and do the things I need to do. And back when I first started doing that for myself, the first quote that I ever picked was embrace the journey, because at that time in my life, I was going through so many transitions and going forward with writing my book, sharing my unspoken truths of my life. And that to me, embrace the journey, was really powerful because you really think about that. You're embracing all that you're going through, you're embracing all that you've been through, and you're stepping forward into a new direction. And you never know what life's going to throw at you. You never know what life's going to put in your path. So I always say, be strong, be ready, and embrace whatever comes and step forward. So embrace the journey is a really big one for me. And as I've moved forward and picked different phrases and terms to step into new years, I always keep embrace the journey with me because that's where it all began for me.
Mm, mm. Not just the good times, but the bad times as well. Because that, I think it gets harder to embrace the journey when things are really not going the way you would like it to go. Um, but I think
Oh,
that's even
yeah,
more
I was
reason.
just going to say, absolutely, yes. I mean, and for myself, definitely embrace the journey meant embracing everything. I had to, when I broke the silence of what happened to me, I had to embrace that part of myself, that part of my life that was hidden and dark and horrendous. And I had to embrace that because that is part of who I am and what I've been through. But saying that, that doesn't define who I truly am. But I've embraced that piece. I've worked with it, worked through it, and I keep moving forward. So we do. We embrace the good, we embrace the bad, we embrace the ugly. It's all part of the journey.
I love that. Thank you.
And Lisa, I've been following you for I am trying to sit here and remember how many years, and I'm thinking, was it on LinkedIn? It has to be. I'm probably on 8 years of following your journey. I've read your book, the first book, and yeah, just know your story is always just just kind of shed some light on some just some dark times that all of us may have faced, and I just find your story inspirational. So I really appreciate your quote of the day, for us to, or quote of your year for our day, and as we move forward.
Oh, thank you so much. And yes, we did connect on LinkedIn, and that was back when my book really first came out. And you have followed me, so I do appreciate you, Tanya, for always following me and supporting my story and the things that I'm doing. And it's a continued journey. We're all on this continued journey as we step forward.
I love that. Thank you, ladies. Lisa, so with that, I'd love you to give us a little bit about your background of who you are.
Oh, that's like a loaded question. Because I know I call myself the woman of many hats because I'm just in so many places and doing so many things. But so the backstory, who I am, I'm Lisa Zarcone, a wife, a mother of 3 grown children, a grandmother of 4, raising 2 of our grandchildren. My husband and I have stepped up into that role, so doing it all over again. And it's been an amazing, part of our lives to be able to have that opportunity to do it again. And we love all of our babies so much. So that's the personal side of me, who's just, I'm a bird geek. I love nature. I just, all of those things. But when you really look at who I am professionally, I am an author, a public speaker, child and mental health advocate. I'm blogging on my own website. A social media influencer, because I say that as because I'm always out there pushing inspiration, pushing encouragement, motivation, and hope all over the place. So I'm all over. But, when I think of the backstory to everything, I was a child who was severely abused. I was a child who went through trauma, loss, abandonment, all of it. My story is so complex. I say this, I don't say this lightly, but it's like, it isn't just one thing. It's just not, I was abused, and that's very broad because abuse is abuse, and it's always horrendous. But I had so many other things happen along the way and in my story and in my life that it's a very complex story to all that I've been through, and bringing in my mother, with her mental illness and how we had to, go through that and walk the path together, a very complex road together. And, I stayed close to my mother right out through her whole life. It was very difficult to do so because my mother was one of my main abusers. So I did travel a horrendous path for many years, then went into my teenage years, which I was very angry. And then I had to make transitions in my life to make decisions to move forward. Do I move forward in a positive way, or do I stay in this negative space? And I chose to be positive, and I chose to be fierce and fight, everything that I was up against. So moving forward from teen years into adulthood, I made the really, very strong choices of what I wanted to do with my life and how I wanted it to unfold. The interesting piece to all of that is that I kept everything silent. I did not share and disclose my abuse to anyone. My husband even didn't know the full extent of what I went through. He knew about my mom, of course, being mentally ill and those struggles, but he really didn't know about the sexual abuse piece and how deep the abuse actually went. So all of this fighting that I did and this fierceness inside of me to keep pushing forward did actually come back to haunt me as I moved forward in life, having my children, starting my family, because all of my darkness from my past came flooding forward into my, present life. And I had to make those steps to face it and fight through it and move forward on a healing journey. So that healing journey has brought me here now and what I'm doing. And here today with both of you ladies sharing all of this.
Right. Jeez. That is,
Yeah.
oh, I've got so many questions.
Lisa, can you share what are the current statistics? I remember when I got involved with sexual survivor abuse, at that time, there was a statistic of 1 in 4 women, and I believe it was 1 out of 8 men or 1 out of 6 men. That was probably back around 2016. Do you have any like current data or more more relevant data than that, as far as this, what the statistic is, and or how is it defined? Just so for our listeners out there, just so they can kind of get a broader perspective of that topic, and as we listen to your your journey of the healing part.
Good question.
Yes, it is a good question. And the statistics. So when we came into the pandemic, a lot of things changed, of course, because people are home and there's really no way out, if you want to say it that way. So the numbers did rise significantly with child abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, suicide. All those numbers just skyrocketed. And now at this point, I think we've kind of leveled off a little bit, but the numbers are still high. I mean, you're still looking at 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 young women who are being sexually abused. The number for men has changed significantly. So you're talking like 1 in 8. Now men are down to like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, because men have stepped forward in the past couple of years to disclose their abuse. So the numbers will change, because back when, men did not disclose their abuse, it was more women doing so, but men are now taking those brave steps to, disclose what's happened to them. So the numbers have changed, but it is happening, and it is happening all the time. And this is why I abdicate. And this is, why I've, pushed forward to write my books and do the things that I've done, is because we still don't know what happens behind closed doors. We still don't talk about it the way we should. And we still need to work on making safe spaces for people to disclose their abuse. So the numbers are still up there. And, abuse doesn't, choose gender. Abuse comes from both. It's male and female that are being abused. So you always have to be aware of your surroundings and really take notice to what's happening, because it's amazing to think that so much is still going on in this day and age. In 2025, we are still fighting those battles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tune in next week for part 2 from Friends from Wild Places.
You've been listening to Friends from Wild Places with Shireen Bueta. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast from the links to catch every episode and unleash your passion.